In the FA Cup, Tamworth spring a shock, Burton Albion finally win, and Wrexham crash out. Meanwhile, in League One, we've got a sacking at Shrewsbury. Welcome to the League One Lowdown. Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I say, a review episode, a bit more of a mixed episode this week. We're going to review some of the FA Cup games, preview a few of the midweek games, and a few bits and pieces of news as well. I'm Jamie Johnson, alongside me, as always, Seb Jones. Seb, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Jamie. How are you cracking on?
Yeah, really good myself. It's been a quite an action-packed weekend. You've been at an FA Cup game. I've watched quite a few on the telly. We've been here, there, and everywhere.
It certainly has been, yeah. We'll come on to this a little bit later on, without giving too much away about the game. I was unfortunately there was no giant killing, but the magic of the FA Cup. We certainly have seen a few. Certainly involving some League One sides as well. But yeah, it's great. Sort of in the first round of the FA Cup, especially this year, no replay, so result has to be decided on the day. So sort of that's a little bit more jeopardy. Been good to see a few different games on telly as well. And as I said, I was at one on Saturday myself. So, but yeah, good, plenty of action to watch across the weekend, and plenty of action covered in this episode.
Definitely. But before we jump in, then I'll ask you that. What you mentioned in terms of scrapping the replays. You seem like you think it's, I guess, a great idea from what you said there. I can see. I'll go first. I guess I can see both sides of it. More from like a lower league, a non-league standpoint. I still think it's a really dreadful idea. I mean, they're going to mention later on Gainsborough Trinity, the lowest ranked team left in. They won on penalties, like got a goal in extra time, got it through and won on penalties eventually. And that obviously is an amazing moment, but it was 3-3 at the end of the game, and that would have gone to a replay back at their place on the Tuesday night, and it totally changes the whole dynamic of the thing. I'm personally in favour of keeping the replays, mainly more for like a money side of things, even though there has been a little bit of consideration given to that, and the prize money has been upped a little bit. But yeah, what do you think, Sam? I'm still negative on the whole thing, even though it has given us some really sort of exciting results this weekend.
Yeah, of course, not to play devil's advocate, but if there had been the replay, then Gainsborough might not be through to the next round, which of course they are. So I take your point. A bit like you, I'm sort of in the middle of it. You know, it's good because a result is decided on the day, a little bit more jeopardy. It's bad because less income for clubs. In terms of pushing for perhaps a home tie if the original time was away from home. On the whole, I can see why they've done it, because in terms of fixture pile up and scheduling and stuff like that, I can see why. Although that does affect the bigger teams more than perhaps the teams at this stage of the competition. So for me, maybe they should have come with some sort of medium ground. Maybe bring it in round 3-4 in terms of the no replay policy, rather than straight away from the first round proper. So yeah, good in terms of the decided result on the day. Bad in terms of there's going to be some financial losses from various clubs in terms of not playing that extra game, which provides a bit more match day income and a bit more, could be often replays were shown on TV as well. So a bit of cash that's not be able to get some clubs.
Yeah, 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. I'm still firmly on the we need replays camp, but that ship has sailed now, hasn't it? So I'm going to have to get over it, and we're going to talk about first off.
Yes, you are.
The game that was on Friday night on TV, and the first of the real giant killings of the weekend. League One, Huddersfield in the Premier League just a few years ago, losing to Tamworth. 5 years ago, Tamworth were in the 7th tier and Huddersfield were in the Premier League. They've still now got a 57 place gap, but a 3G pitch, a long throw, a proper FA Cup game, and a really huge giant killing.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to say this, but I admit to you before we started, I did watch the game, as did you. But with the goal, it was just a minute or so to go before half time. I thought, it's just a throw in, nothing's going to happen. So I just nipped downstairs to get a drink, came back up, and the commentator said, "Oh, it's half time. Tamworth 1, Huddersfield 0." I was like, "What's going on here then?" So, I missed a goal in truth. Obviously, seen that multiple times since. But it started off the FA Cup first round weekend on a great note, really. Surprising result. Not to say it wasn't deserved, because Tamworth certainly tried to knock down that Huddersfield Town defence a couple of times, particularly the way that the goal came, which was from a long throw-in. They were causing havoc with that throughout. Rory Delap-esque really throughout the game. So yeah, it was good. Yeah. Set off a good tone for the weekend. Defended well in the second half when Huddersfield brought a couple of their better players off the bench. That stood around Tamworth. Huddersfield were disappointed. Michael Duff wasn't afraid at the end to sort of call out his players, really, saying it's unacceptable.
Didn't mince his words, did he?
No, not at all. I don't want to misquote him, but saying that it was unacceptable to be losing at that stage of the competition. And the performance just wasn't there at all. So yeah, Mark Duff was right frustrated with his team's performance. In terms of the goal as well, the goal was pretty scrappy, wasn't it, really, Jamie? It's gone down as a keeper's own goal, but he's got to do better, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think it's slightly harsh on the goalkeeper, only because so it's Tom Tonks with the throw-in, who was built up before the game. He's got an amazing long throw, and you always hear this, don't you? And it's like, yeah, sure he does. And then it was like a javelin. It was Rory. You say Rory Delap-esque. It was like it's a throw-in Rory Delap a dream about. It was unbelievable. 32 yards they measured it at half time. Wow. They had a nice graphic up. Unbelievable, and as I say, and it sort of came in, and the goalkeeper punched it, and it went in. If he hadn't have punched it, it would have gone straight in and been disallowed. But the keeper's not going to think about that, and then no one in the right mind is going to think about that, because the ball's coming towards your net. You're going to try and clear it, and he probably should punch it over the top of his net. But he was moving backwards. I'll be nice to him. He was sort of taking a few steps back, goes to punch it, and knocks it into his own net. A really unbelievable goal. But really well deserved. Tamworth played really well. They had sort of control in the middle of the park. Tonks was one of the centre midfielders, and he had a really good game. The skipper, I think he was, and they spoke to him afterwards. And obviously the next round coming on the 30th of November, his wife or partner, she's due a baby due on the 28th, a couple of days before. And he said, I hope it comes a few days early so I don't miss the Saturday. Which that's the sort of stories you love to see, isn't it, from an FA Cup? And a giant killing like this, it's people who are got other jobs. And I mean, we're using the Games, for example, their captain had a nice piece done about him on the Friday. He's a labourer during the week, and then plays football Tuesday night, Saturdays, and it's really nice to see sort of people at that sort of level doing so well and beating a side who have some real money behind them and some really good players.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it was just a few years ago that Huddersfield were in the top flight, and Tamworth probably could only dreamed at that point of beating them, but they were successful in that first round. Yeah, really nice sort of heartwarming stories, a giant killing story to set off the weekend on a good note, as I alluded to earlier. But yeah, for me, in terms of if we look at it from a Huddersfield point of view, they were poor, really poor. Tamworth got the goal. You're probably doing the goalkeeper a little bit of injustice, really. I think he's got to do better. For me, I know there's a crowded penalty area, but he's got to come out and catch it and claim it, and then he kicks the ball at field, and the half-time whistle goes. There's not long left to go at all. He's got to do better. He's got to command his box. Huddersfield, well, not just his keeper, but the whole defenders defending that set piece, deliver it in as well. Not just from the goal, but the other chances as well. If you mentioned it was hard on TV coverage, if they knew what to expect, then why did the Huddersfield back line?
They've got to prepare for it, haven't they? Because it seemed like it came in and, for lack of a better terms, crap themselves when the from both came in, and they didn't seem to know what to do. And everyone knew it was coming. I watched half an hour of the build-up and knew it was all about this long throw. So, I mean, do a bit of prep in the week. This long throw is going to be a real danger, a real asset for Tamworth. And, I mean, that's what did it in the end. It was 1-0, a really sort of making the most of the attributes and the qualities your team have in terms of that long throw. And then they defended really well. And they played really well and were probably the better team, all things considered. Huddersfield had plenty of chances sort of in those last 10, 15 minutes, but just didn't do anything with them and deserved to lose, really, I think. It's a really great...
Proper smash and grab performance, really, from Tamworth. Proper smash and grab.
Yeah, definitely that. And that brings on a little bit to the next game in terms of there was a tweet I saw on the Friday night from a Burton fan that said they've won more games against League One teams than us this season. That obviously still stands, but Burton finally got themselves a win. Their first in 12 games, much needed for Burton and for the interim boss, Tom Hounsall. And you were there, Seb, against Scarborough Athletic. 1-0 in the end.
Yeah, 1-0 in the end. I was there at the Pirelli Stadium. And it was a bit of a weird one, really, because Scarborough brought loads of fans. It was about 1,300 travelled across from North Yorkshire. So great sort of supporting travelling fans. And they were non-stop all game. So you just thought, to get behind the team, and the momentum was with the away side, really. Burton Albion have done really poor in the league so far, to the point where they got rid of the manager, Mark Robinson, before that, brought in Tom Hansel. I think it's how you say it.
It's a bit of a mouthful, his surname.
Bit of a mouthful, yeah.
I'm going for
Hansel.
Hansel,
yeah, we'll go with that. So they brought him in on an interim basis. He was sort of an assistant coach before. He's been helped out by John Brayford as well. So this was actually their first win of the season, Burton Albion. They've not won in the league so far in that their campaign. And actually, it probably could have been more. They missed a penalty in that first half. Really poor penalty. Straight, really weak effort, straight down the middle. And the Scarborough goalkeeper was able to play pretty comfortably, really. Not really challenging too much. Burton always seemed to be under control, but Scarborough still had that momentum and that edge. And, with the fans that they brought with them, they seem to have a little bit sort of it's not actually over yet. They could do, they could still grab it. It was Jack Cooper-Love who missed his spot kick after he was brought down. But it was good, yeah. Scarborough had a couple of chances, a couple of sort of shots from distance, but nothing really stood out for them. And Burton were able to manage to get the first win of the season. And it was, you could hear afterwards sort of the sigh of relief, really, within the stadium at the Pirelli. And just, that the winners finally come for Burton.
They beat Leicester City's academy in the Johnston Payne, the Bristol Street Mowers, you want to call it, back in August. But their first, I'd say their first proper win, beating another senior team in a competition like the FA Cup. Obviously, still not got that league win, which we will talk about further on when we get to the previews for Tuesday night. But it is still a little bit of monkey off your back, isn't it? 11 games without a win. And they've finally got one, and it could be the thing that spurs them on. I know we talked about a few weeks ago if they lost the two league games, Wycombe and Cambridge, and then lost this one, that would be the end for Robinson, the manager. I mean, he's gone already. So I was being too generous there. And it is a real sort of they need to kick on, and we will talk about that when we get to the preview. But I guess a word on Scarborough, the other side in that game, they brought a lot, like you mentioned. You did a bit of work with them sort of in the week leading up to the game.
I sort of covered ground from my university here. So the momentum was with them. They just come back off a National League North win as well. But Burton just seemed to have, I don't know, just didn't seem to have anything really going into this game. Nothing really to sort of pride themselves. Nothing to use as momentum. But this win has surely got to give them something going forward in the league campaign. Combined with you'd imagine a fresh manager coming in with new ideas. You'd imagine that this could be a spark for them, Burton Albion. But they did impress. To be fair, they had chances, particularly when their striker Daniele Orsi came on. So he came off the bench 65 minutes, and just 4 minutes later, he set up the fellow substitute Kalle Naskas, who scored the only goal of the game. So for me, Orsi's impact was, you could, as soon as he come on, he just looked ready, he looked proud, he looked ready to go. And I know they've not had too much to cheer about Burton Albion this season, but he was definitely certainly a star as soon as he came off the bench. And the other player as well would be Ben Whitfield, who impressed. I think he sort of played a left wing back role, but cut inside. He's right footed, so kept cutting inside. But he kept sort of having those curling efforts from the edge of the penalty area, which did cause Scarborough some havoc. A couple of crosses got deflections, and then went out for corners or the keeper misjudged. So he did really well, Whitfield. But obviously the man with the decisive goal that saw the difference between two sides was the substitute. I beg your pardon, Kalaniskas, after being set up from Orsi. So yeah, Burton should be happy. They made 8 changes prior to this one. Couple of the sort of fringe players did impress. And yeah, it was good showing. Plenty of youngsters about, but it was a good showing from Burton Albion. As for Scarborough, sort of unlucky, really. You know, they got beaten by a team 3 leagues above them, so they can't really complain too much. They gave it a good go, and that's what it's all about. They've had a good competition. They've equalled their best ever sort of run in the FA Cup. That was last year as well. So the 2's on the trot, they've reached first on proper, but again, just like last year, not able to progress to round 2. But as for Burton, good win, much needed win as well. And to do it, when everything was going against them in terms of the number of fans there in supporting Scarborough, the results prior to that game, the league table position, everything was just going against them. So to get the win, I think we're massive going forward for Burton.
Yeah, definitely a confidence builder. Well, I was at a fireworks display over the weekend, but there's plenty of fireworks in the other FA Cup games. You knew where that was going, didn't you, Seb?
I certainly did, yeah.
And we'll have a quick whiz through them. Lots of giant killings, lots of goals, lots of energy, and just unbelievable scorelines. But we'll start sort of work our way through them. Bristol Rovers, they won 3-1 against Weston-super-Mare. Bit of a local derby, sort of out the same neck of the woods, aren't they, out there? Carlisle lost 2-0 to Wigan. That was after extra time, and Carlisle went down to 10 men in the 14th minute. So over 100 minutes later, the game finally ended, and Wigan got through there. 8 goals at Exeter versus Barnet. It went 5-3 the way of the League One side in that one. McGuinness with a hat-trick. They were 3-2 down, Exeter, until the 85th minute when McGuinness finished his hat-trick, and then there were 2 goals after the 95th minute to secure the 5-3 win. So plenty of late drama there.
Yeah, busy on that one.
Definitely that. Blackpool, a 2-0 win for them against Gillingham. Sonny Carey with the brace there. Maidenhead, they lost 1-2 to Crawley Town after extra time. And then I guess the first sort of stopping point, Port Vale 1, Barnsley 3. You must be happy, Seb. You've gone to... if they're not the table toppers, I think they are, but they're definitely up there in the top of League Two. One of the better teams in the division. Darren Moore, obviously a manager that knows South Yorkshire very well, but comes out on the wrong end of things against Barnsley.
Yeah, it certainly does, yeah. But solid win, I think, really. Adam Phillips back from injury, back on the score sheet. David Skilladone as well, scoring for Barnsley. Mark Roberts as well on his 100th appearance for the Reds. So yeah, some 3 different goal scorers within the win, and some good all-round play, I think, from the Reds against, as you said, a side that have been doing very well in League Two against a good manager in Darren Moore, as you mentioned. So yeah, solid win. We can't look too much into it. It's a League Two opposition, and we played a very strong side. I think there's only 1 change from our last league game. So yeah, pretty strong side, and we through to the next round, and we're going to play Bristol Rovers. So annoying that it's a fellow League One club, but again, another one we could beat on our day.
You're looking at that as a game you're hoping to get through and expecting to get through, really.
Of course, yeah. I mean, similar to Burton, but on the opposite spectrum, Port Vale were on a good run of form, so they'll have been hoping that, alongside their league form, they could have had a cup run to go alongside that. But we've entered their progress, which is kudos to Darren Clark and his playing squad as well.
Peterborough United, they were 2-0 down after 7 minutes, but fought back in Wales. They won 4-2 against Newport County. A little bit of controversy. I guess you'd call it a ghost goal. It went in the back of the net. The referee thought it hit the side netting. Wasn't given. It was all a bit of a strange one. I've seen it from a few different angles and still can't quite make up my mind. I think it probably should have been given as a goal, but they won't mind too much. They won in the end anyway. Reading, they won 2-0 against Fleetwood. Salford City, 2-1 winners against Shrewsbury. We'll cover that in the second half of the podcast. And one of the other sort of big shocks, Rotherham United won, Cheltenham 3. Rotherham United, Steve Evans losing to a side in the bottom half of League Two. Admittedly, a team on a good run of form, but still a game you expect Rotherham to win.
It's Port as well. I don't think Steve Evans did the Port's match interviews either. He left that for his assistant, and so people were
never a good sign, is it?
Never a good time. People were sort of raising questions and speculating, and obviously so far, nothing seems to be happening. But you do wonder, as you mentioned quite a few times, how long until something happens at Rotherham. We mentioned the signings that they brought in over the summer. A lot of them. Steve Evans has also said he wants to bring even more in January as well. So. Interesting, but that can't be good for them really. Losing to Cheltenham in the manner that they did as well. Poor really from Rotherham.
There's no other word for it really, is there?
Yeah,
you just got to admit what it is really. That they're in a really difficult patch. It's not something you. When you're in sort of that mood, I guess, around the club where they keep getting kicked while they're down, and this is just another one of those, isn't it? They're already struggling and they've got a real kick to the teeth, losing this FA Cup game, and not happy sign, especially at home as well. Isn't good at all. 7 goals at Charlton Athletics game. They won in the end 4-3 at Southend. 121st minute, the winner came in that one. After extra time, Ahadame scored that. Another sort of unbelievable scoreline, unbelievable drama there. Stevenage, they needed penalties to beat Guiseley after a 1-1 draw after extra time. Stockport, 2-1 win against Forest Green Rovers. They also needed extra time. A real running theme here that a lot of these games going for extra time and a couple of them to penalties. Cambridge United, 1-0 winners against Woking. It's 4 in a row for Gary Monk and Cambridge. I don't think
who'd have thought. Who'd have
quite believe that. Exactly 3 or 4 weeks ago, if you'd have told us that was going to happen, we think we'd looked at you a little bit quizzically, but it has happened quite unbelievably. And York City, they lost 3-2 to Wycombe. That leaves us 2 more games on Saturday, 2 more upsets. Northampton Town, they lost 2-1 to Kettering, a local derby there. Now Ranger, 33-year-old, a man that's been around the block a couple of times, an extra time winner for him. And then Bolton, they also lost 2-1. That to Walsall, 91st minute winner for one of League Two's top scoring sides. What do you make of those 2 upsets? One surprised me more than the other one. I'll let you have a guess which one I'm referring
to. Well, actually, Northampton were on a good run of form, really. So to see they went ahead in the Kettering game, so to see them come fall to defeat, I think surprised me. Bolton, I think we mentioned a little. It's sort of similar to Rotherham, really. The morale and the mood around the club seems a little bit low at the minute. So I'm not so surprised about that one. I'm going to be truthfully honest with you. But yeah, the Northampton one's certainly more surprising than the Bolton one, in my opinion. What do you reckon, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I was going to go with that. I mean, Bolton are, struggling, a bit inconsistent, you'd say, in Walsall. As I said a minute ago, in terms of their free scoring, I think only Chesterfield have scored more goals than them in League Two. 26, I think they've got so far this season. And they're sort of bagging goals for fun a little bit and are a very sort of entertaining, high energy sort of team. and Bolton, a Bolton side who are shaky and beatable. And that's exactly what's happened to them. They've away from home, late drama there, and a win. Yeah, probably I didn't see coming, but I could believe. If I was to pick out a few where the upsets were going to be, it probably would be one you pick out. Northampton, wouldn't have been, but we'll talk about them as well when we get to the second half. A couple of new signings for them, free agents off the market and in for the Cobblers. So we'll talk about that, and then tonight, probably at the time you're listening to this, Monday night, Cheshire United, they're hosting Lincoln City at the televised game, and then the day we're recording this, the Sunday, there was 4 games involving League One sides. Birmingham, a really strong Birmingham side, won at Sutton United. Leyton Orient needed penalties, saved by the bell a little bit, Richie Wellens side. They drew 2-2 with Boreham Wood, held on after an extra time red card, and eventually got the win on penalties. Much more routine for Mansfield. They won 4-0 at Curzon Ashton. And then the last sort of shock of the round, Harrogate Town of League Two, beating Wrexham, and their reward, if you like, they've been drawn against the lowest ranked team left in it, which is Gainsborough Trinity, sort of one of the teams I cover in my area in Lincoln, North Lincolnshire. The one that I've penciled in, that would be the game I go to when we get to the second round. But that, another shock. I don't think anyone expected that. Live on television on the Sunday, Harrogate beating one of the higher performers in League One.
Yeah, and probably one of the the highest ranked teams that were in the competition at that stage. So yeah, massive surprise from those probably inside the club and those outside the club as well. Wrexham went on a good run a few years ago. Played Sheffield United, managed to get a replay against them, but weren't able to progress. But went on a good run, and that's a competition that they'll want to take seriously. But they've been knocked out on the first hurdle, so. They'll be massively disappointed. Phil Parkinson was massively disappointed. Obviously, he was in charge of Bradford when they famously beat Chelsea all those years ago. So it's certainly a competition he's done well in before, and he'll want to do well in again. But not the case. Just a singular goal, the difference between Harrogate and Wrexham. But we've got to praise Harrogate for getting through. And beating the clubs at home, but it just shows what sort of a home atmosphere can do. A home FA Cup tie can do. Having the fans behind you and beating a team like Wrexham is very impressive.
Exactly that. So we're going to head to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the couple of new signings at Northampton. We'll preview the couple of games on Tuesday night and talk about the real mess that's going on at Shrewsbury. Welcome back then to the League One Lowdown, the hybrid review preview FA Cup special.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, here on the Deck Podcast Network. We'll jump in then to the sacking of Paul Hurst at Shrewsbury. The straw that broke the camel's back there, a loss in the FA Cup 2-1, I think it was, to Salford of League Two. 9 months in charge, Hurst. It was his second spell. I mean, real success in his first spell. Got to the League One playoff final, got to the EFL Trophy final. But after just one win in 4 defeats in a row, including that one against Salford I've just mentioned, and he's been shown the door. Some other behind-the-scenes issues to talk about as well. But first on Hurst, Paul Hurst leaving. Sarah, probably one to be expected, but you're still always a little bit shocked when a manager does go.
Yeah, I'm really not surprised by this at all. I think it'd probably been brewing for a little bit of time. The results just hadn't been going the way that he would like. The performances as well, not convincing at all, really. And just overall, it's just been really disappointing for Shrewsbury so far this season. You mentioned Paul Hurst has got good history at the club, and imagine that was probably the tie keeping him at the within the club for as long as he has. Really, it's been the last month or so. It's been it's been on the rocks a little bit. You can tell between Paul Hurst and Shrewsbury. It's not been good. Results haven't been good enough. Performances haven't been great, and in the end, it's, as you said, it's the FA Cup. result that has cost him the sack. But for me, I'm not surprised by it at all. Yeah, one that you could see coming, but you're always surprised, as you know, with the history that Paul Hurst did have with Shrewsbury. But they needed to do it. It's something that needed to happen, and they've done it now. And hopefully they can move on and try and sort of rescue, if you like, the season so far after what has been a disappointing start.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think I said it a couple of weeks ago in terms of Dino Manria when he was on about maybe he was going back to Burton, maybe not, maybe. That never go back to an ex, which is perhaps the adage to say here in terms of Shrewsbury. I mean, he had some really good times at the club in that first spell, but never really be able to replicate them, I beg your pardon, since coming back in January. Obviously kept them up last season, but not really built on that at all. And they're really struggling down in the relegation zone. And I think it might have been last week's episode when we talked about the fact that they've gone a little bit under the radar in terms of how much they are struggling. And perhaps that's caught up with them a little bit. The teams picking up around them, a Crawley pick up results here and there. Cambridge obviously on a decent run as well. And they're slowly slipping further and further. And Burton obviously sacked their manager. And there is a sort of reaction to that, isn't there? When everyone else is making moves around you, if you like, suddenly it becomes, right, well, we need to do something as well to try and keep up. So he's gone after an emergency board meeting. And the other note that came out of that, Roland Wycombe, the chairman, offered his resignation. He was rejected by the board. It seems as if, reading from a BBC article, just to read a segment from the statement the chairman made. This morning at our emergency board meeting, I offered my immediate resignation as chairman. This was rejected by the board, as despite all the positive changes we are making to reduce the losses, without my current financial support, we would not be able to continue to fulfill our commitments. So I read that, and I guess in layman's terms, or in the simpler way of saying it, is the chairman has offered his resignation, and the board said you can't leave because without your money, the ship sinks.
Yeah,
and
we need you basically. We need you to stay.
Yeah, it's a really dire situation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's poor, really, but it's a poor situation to be in, and you sort of begging your chairman to not leave. It's unheard of, really. But I'm not that sort of level. I'm not really surprised that I think chairman's do a lot of work behind the scenes that clubs don't really, that the fans don't know about, in terms of keeping clubs afloat, injecting their own cash into clubs to keep it financially sustainable. It's just that this time we've seen sort of things come out. I think it happens up and down the country, but to see it actually sort of come out like this, I guess, is quite interesting. Basically saying that if the chairman goes, then Shrewsbury won't be able to survive, and because they need the financial support. So interesting that the fact that it's been made public. But I'm not surprised by it. But it does sort of show the poor state that Shrewsbury are in at the moment. I'm glad it's not been rejected. Sorry, I'm glad it has been rejected by the board. Because I think particularly being a local person to the area, which he is, I think football clubs are better for having a local chairman.
And you don't want to see another club, obviously the worst case scenario, but you don't want to see another club sort of go in that direction. That, I mean, a Scunthorpe, a Southend we mentioned earlier, a Bury and Oldham, the teams that have fell off side of cliffs in terms of the financial support drying up. But you never want that to happen to any club, and we don't want that to happen again in this situation. If we circle back to Paul Hurst, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Seb, and ask you the obvious question of who do we think is going to take his place?
Well, I genuinely can't see anyone. Well, I don't have anyone in my mind apart from the man that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I feel like he's the one, sort of, mainly because he's So obviously we did the interview with him, and I mean I'm quite good at plugging that interview, but it is on the same stream you're watching or listening to us here. Our interview with Dino Manria, former Burton manager and Stevenage. He's the sort of name that pops out to me immediately in terms of an out of work manager who's got really good League One experience. I mean, Mark Kennedy was linked to the to the Burton job. He was linked to sort of like any job that's going at the minute, obviously after leaving Swindon. I'm not so sure on that. I think he might have to take another step before returning to League One after, a failed start to the season at Swindon. So it's interesting. There's not lots of names floating around. Maybe a Gareth Ainsworth, someone like that.
Potentially,
There are. Yeah. It's the names that get linked with every job, isn't it? That have come around in this sort of area, League One, League Two job, and all the same names come out. So we'll see in a few days, a week or so, who will take over.
Yeah, it's not the most appealing job, being brutally honest. It's not the most appealing, but it's.
That does sound like Sam.
Well, I'm just speaking the truth. It's if a manager is going to take it on, then fair play. But I think it will be one of the sort of the classic manager that comes in this part of the year and saves the team.
Yeah,
and Dino Manria fits that category perfectly.
Yep, exactly that. So we'll shimmy on over, beg your pardon, to Northampton. A couple of signings for them, sort of been washed away in the weekend. It seems like so much has happened since that this sort of news is bubbled away. I know when we were sort of doing a bit of prep in terms of what we're going to talk about before all the other bits and pieces came up across the weekend, this was something we did want to talk about, and we've managed to keep it in. 2 free agent signings for Northampton. TJ Ioma, who obviously I know a little bit about, interviewed a couple of times when he was at Lincoln, left in the summer. Really solid League One defender, mainly a centre-half, but can play in a 5. He did that in Lincoln, obviously, can play at wing-back as well. I mean, I'm just surprised it took this long for him to find a club. I thought he'd walk into a club. And I think there were Bristol Rovers was the link in the summer. And there were a few sort of names floating around. I think he's been sort of with the PFA a little bit, sort of doing that with sort of the free agents team they put together. But finally he's found a team, and I'm really happy that it's in League One, because I think that is his level. Really solid centre-half is the best way to describe it. And then Martin Waghorn, who was at Derby most recently, 34 years old, has been around the block at least twice. Left Derby in the summer after his second spell there. Not the most consistent over recent years. 7 goals in 24 last season. His last 10 goal plus season came in 2019-20. That was in the Championship though. But he's not been the most consistent in front of goal. So 6 on one, half a dozen the other. I think Ioma's a great pickup to get a free agent of that quality in start of November. He's really good going. Waghorn, I think there might have been a reason he was on the free agents list.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I think it's 2 solid options. Both good in their respective departments for various reasons. I think with Waghorn, because of his age, I think we should, well, at my point of view, I see him more as an experienced head rather than as a 20-goal a season striker. He's an experienced head at the top of the field, to perhaps come on to see out a game with 10-15 minutes to go. Is a handful for defenders, and I think that could be a good little omen for Northampton. TJ Ioma, on the other hand, I think is a really solid option. Even I knew quite a lot about him, despite having never really sort of, unlike you, sort of covered him too much. The name massively rang a bell. I've seen him play against Barnsley a few times, seen him sort of pop up as in team of the week sort of stuff, team of the season sort of thing as well. So yeah, it's a solid option. Was with Lincoln for quite a while, and I think it's, as you said, so it was about time he got signed up, and he had. Northampton have been on a good run of form this season, probably overachieving in my eyes. I think we mentioned this last week. I think they're overachieving, so they're both solid signings. Martin Waghorn is on the last stretch of his career. He's probably the polite way of putting it. TJ Ioma has got plenty of years ahead of him. but nevertheless still has plenty of experience. So it's a perfect sort of middle ground player.
And League One proven, isn't he?
Exactly that. Yeah,
I guess the main thing.
So yeah, both good options for various reasons.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, obviously they lost to Kettering, as we mentioned earlier on. They were 4 games unbeaten before losing to Lincoln on Tuesday night, and then they followed that up with another loss. But they weren't in bad form before that. A bit up and down, winning a few, losing a few, winning a few there, down in 18th. So it could give them a little bit of a boost. Someone at the back, someone up front, really sort of re-energizing the team and changing those important cogs, that spine of the team, adding some new bodies, which is always useful. And I think, it could make a difference. More Ioma than Wycombe, but I think they could both prove to be really good pickups, especially on the free agent market. So we'll move on then to our last segment here of the podcast. We'll preview the 2 games that are happening on Tuesday night. We'll start first with Stockport County and Wycombe Wanderers. Stockport got themselves back on track with a 4-1 win in the league on Tuesday night over Reading, and then needed extra time to beat Forest Green. It ended a run quite bizarrely, really, where they'd in the last 9 games before that had only won 1, but they actually only lost 2. So they've become sort of draw specialists.
Yeah.
And have been a little bit chugging along rather than going on a good run of form. Wycombe, on the other hand, I mean, they're definitely on a good run of form. 5 wins on the spin, and they're only lost in the last 14 in the Cup against Aston Villa, flying high, are Wycombe. So it's an interesting game, I think. A Stockport on a little bit of a turn in a bend, and Wycombe, who are very much flying, at the top of the table.
Yeah, right. You summed it up perfectly there. Yeah, Wycombe are flying. There's no way of saying that, really. I probably do better than any of us thought, really, at this point, if we had to predict. But they're doing really well, Wycombe. On a good run of form, through to the last round of the FA Cup. Before that, 4 wins on the bounce as well, and then a draw at Barnsley just before that too. So, yeah, solid, really solid start for Wycombe, and they'll be very pleased with their current position in the league table, second. Just 3 points behind Birmingham. That's massive, really, for Wycombe and for Matt Bloomfield and his side. Stockport, on the other hand, have, as you said, sort of faded a little bit. Draw specialists. They got through the FA Cup. Yes, it took extra time, but they've had a bit of a mixed spell, really, losing to Lincoln away and then beating Reading, thrashing Reading, I should say, 4-1. Before the FA Cup game. So it's been a little bit mixed, really. And then actually prior to those 2 games I mentioned, it's consecutive draws for them. So it's been a bit mixed. If I had to choose a side, I'd go Wycombe.
Go have a score off you then, Seb.
A score, I'm going to go 2-0.
2-0. Well, I'll go for 2-1. I think Louis Barrier probably get himself on the score sheet. He seems to be a real threat at the minute, at least. I mean, he has been for a while, but in a good run of form. But we're both going to go for Wycombe. You 2-0, I'll go for 2-1. And then we'll go on to the final game in that midweek. It's a bit of a weird midweek with only the 2 games, a bit of a catch-up from international breaks and so on. But Burton Albion hosting Crawley Town. Obviously, they're still winless in the league, Burton, but did get, as we obviously covered in the first half, that important win to end their streak of 11 without against Scarborough. Crawley struggling, though, a little bit. They got the win against National League, a struggling National League side. Needed a late equaliser and extra time to do that. And they're a bit of a bizarre team. We'll talk about Crawley first. I mean, we covered Burton, obviously, a little bit earlier on. They beat Lincoln 3-0 in what was a shock on the Lincoln side of things and seemed to have been a shock on the Crawley side of things, a real flash in the pan. And they've just not done anything either side of that. And I just don't know what to make of Crawley. They're so just difficult to predict. They seem to just spring a result out of nowhere, and then they'll disappear for a couple of weeks and lose, and then they'll spring a result out of nowhere, and it's not consistent, but more positive than Burton, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, obviously they had a new manager come in at the start of the month, Rob Elliott from Gateshead. So it took a little bit of settling, and I think we are still seeing that with a few mixed results. I think when a manager comes in, it's not always just this bounce and this immediate results that are going to be shown. But yeah, you're right. As you said, sort of going from beating Lincoln to then losing the same score, beating Lincoln 3-0 to losing the same scoreline against Northampton. It's not good. It's not consistent at all. Before that, they'd lost the last 4 before that as well. So yeah, more losses than wins, I think, at this point. But they're inconsistent, really, which is the biggest downfall. That they sit 22nd in the league, only 1 point from safety, but they do occupy that relegation spot at the moment. We've only 10 points from 13, so yeah, worrying signs really. I know that they only got the manager in last month, so you have to give them a few months to get settled, get used to players, etc., etc. So yeah, and that's a bit in Albion. Obviously, they are rock bottom, so 4 points from 12. 22nd versus 24th. It's not really that much of an appealing game, if I'm being honest with you.
It's a chance for both of them to get a win. I mean, they're both going to be going into this game and going, we need to win. We should win this game. Burton have got that confidence boost from the FA Cup game. Crawley as well. I mean, it's still a bit of a confidence build. I know it's took them. They've gone the long way around, but they've got themselves a win, and in that dramatic sort of fashion. And Crawley, if they win, they're out of the relegation zone. Obviously, early stages doesn't really matter, but it's that confidence and I guess more of a mental thing of not being in that below that dreaded dotted line. So I think there's a lot to play for both of the teams. Obviously, as a neutral, you look at it and go, oh, really? Are we sure? And it's the same night as the US election, so I'm going to be sort of that is the sort of thing I'll be. I'm not going to be on Sky sort of what.
You don't want to advertise that on a League One podcast, Jamie. Come on.
Yeah, I won't be watching the election. I'm going to be watching Burton Crawley.
Just edit that bit out. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big chance for both of them to get a win.
Yeah, and you do have to beat your sides around you, and it's a chance to pick up 3 points or at least a point where perhaps you almost know you're not going to get anything against sides like Birmingham, Wrexham, Wycombe at the way that they're going. Those sides are sort of out of reach, whereas if you play a side near you, you are likely to pick up points, and you have to do so to sort of springboard away from them and to just open up the gap a little bit more. So yeah, both sides will be looking to do so. Yeah, it's still not the most exciting League One action.
Exactly that. Well, and on that really positive note, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Seb, thanks for joining me, and thanks everyone for listening, for watching. If you're on YouTube, do like the video, subscribe, helps us massively. And as well, if you're listening on whatever platform, podcast-wise, you are listening, give us a follow, give us a review or a like or whatever it is on whatever platform you are listening along. But thanks for joining us. Callum and Sam will be back before the end of the week for a preview episode. I'm sure they'll review those couple of games you just talked about.
Back to proper League One this week as well.
Yeah, exactly that. It's back to the bread and butter of the League One lowdown, and we'll be back same time, same place next week to do it all over again. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week.